This is done. This is something that's going to be your responsibility at some point. You'll be working in the ER. Here comes a mother, man. She's all desperate because her baby has a condition like this. You should never misdiagnose this, all right? Because it's so obvious. So pay attention. Get a whoop. So this is multiple coughs in one breath. That's the whoop. All right, that's something you don't want to miss. Hear that there? That's characteristic for this disease. All right, so you guys seen that, right? That's whooping cough. That's not just your typical cold or something. This is caused by a bacterium. Very dangerous. All right, that's in a baby. And again, it's more severe in babies compared to adults. I also have an adult here. Tell me if you've seen this slide, this video. This is from an adult. Of course, adults can have whooping cough too. All right? Have you guys seen this?
Yeah, it's on.
There's a whoop. All right? Again, these are very serious conditions. You don't take these lightly. You don't want to misdiagnose these. So again, especially with babies, very, very serious. So let me ask a question. Do you guys see my screen? I don't want to keep talking and you guys don't see my screen. Are we good?
Yeah.
Nice. You guys see how significant that is? And think about a baby trying to breathe. You have that one breath and just multiple coughs and just trying to take a breath in. That's a staccato cough, all right? And again, if you have multiple times during the day, even within a period of 5 minutes where that's occurring. So that's a very, very bad thing. That's something you don't want to misdiagnose. It's a huge problem. All right. So another thing I want to say about this is there's a vaccine for it. I already mentioned it. All right. You guys remember the vaccine we talked about? It's DPT. Right over here. Where's that vaccine at? Okay. Oh boy. I did talk about it here. Right? Diphtheria. Remember this right here? That's the DTaP or Tdap or DTPA. All right, these are all the same. Notice what this targets. Diphtheria. We talked about diphtheria, tetanus, and then pertussis. Well, this vaccine is very effective against pertussis. So, don't misdiagnose that one. It can be very detrimental to babies. All right? Okay, so that's pertussis. Now, the next disease on the list, this is lower respiratory tract infection, right? It's tuberculosis. So you hear about TB a lot. We're going to talk more about this disease. Let me just say this is the #1 killer on the planet. Last year, it was designated the #1 killer. Don't forget that. The reason why is because 2 million people died last year because of tuberculosis. Before it was malaria, now TB's at the top of the list. The planet has 7.8 billion people. Think about this, all right? That's a lot of people. But 2 billion people are infected. This is like 25% of the world's population are infected with TB. Yet most people do not have TB. And that's an important thing to realize. Not because you have this organism in your system doesn't mean to say you have the disease. And we're going to see why in a second, all right? Okay, so let me erase this here, and let's go for it. The organism that causes TB is called a TB complex. There are 3 different organisms, but they all are very similar genetically. The primary organism, of course, is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. All right, so this is MTB, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. About 90% of people who carry this organism has latent TB. In other words, it's in the lung, but they don't have disease. And we're going to see why in a second. If you get TB, typically developed in about 3 months or so. All right? I mentioned this is a complex of bacteria. Here are the 3 organisms that can cause TB. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Mycobacterium africanum, and then Mycobacterium bovis. All right? So this is the linkage pattern, but nonetheless, this slide tells you this. These are the three species of Mycobacterium that can cause tuberculosis. All right, what do I want you to know about the organism itself? Yeah, if they were stained gram-positives, but they have a very special ingredient in their cell wall. It's called mycolic acid. Now, some of you actually already had a lab this week. You guys probably did an acid-fast stain. So acid-fast stains are very specific to Mycobacterium species. So we don't use a gram stain to detect this organism. We use an acid-fast stain, all right? Now, there are many different groups. That's not for you. So don't waste your time memorizing all these species. All I care about is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, africana, and then bovis, all right? As I mentioned to you before, we have there's a number one pathogen or number one killer on the planet is TB, infectious disease. 1 in 7 people die. Right? 200 years ago, 100 years ago, is still true today. Another thing I'd like you to know is most cases of TB, and this hasn't changed for a while, so most cases are from immigrants. So this lighter blue is U.S. born, you can tell right over here, and then the darker blue are immigrants. So most cases of TB actually is people who actually migrate into the country. So keep that in mind. All right. That's a concept map for you. This is something you're going to go through after we talk about the disease. If you really understood it, you should be able to go through these concept maps and say, you know what, I understand TB. Now, having said this, let's talk about the disease itself, all right? So now we get into the substance of what I want you to know. Are you guys seeing this slide? Somebody say yeah?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I have to ask every so often because something pops up on my screen that you guys don't see, and I want to be sure that, you know, when I'm talking about something, you guys see what I'm talking about. So think about this for a second, all right? Imagine somebody's exposed to TB. That's in the lung, right? And here's the thing, 90% of cases don't actually result in TB. Only less than 5% actually do. So when somebody has TB, though, what signs are they demonstrating? Well, here's some important things I want you to remember. This is pretty complicated here. Many different signs and symptoms, right? But these are the ones I want you to remember because they're very important. First of all, they've been coughing for greater than 3 weeks. That's really important. They have fever and sweats for over 3 weeks. They're losing weight. They have breathing pains. They can't breathe properly. And that makes sense because the lungs are infected. And they demonstrate hemoptysis. I want you to know that that's a clinical term now. This is blood-stained sputum. They're coughing up sputum from the lungs, but it's got blood in it. You probably know that because based on movies that you've probably seen, somebody with TB, then they're coughing up blood, right? Well, yeah, that's true. And of course, they can have lesions in the lung. So these five things are really important, all right? Because this is what you can see or what you can actually relate to. They're coughing for more than 3 weeks. They have fever and sweats. They're losing weight. They have breathing pains. They have hemoptysis. This is blood in the sputum. And of course, you can look at some more extensive symptoms here. But these are the ones I want you to remember, right? But to understand this disease, we have to look at this slide. I know it's pretty tiny for you, but I want you to spend some time on it, right? So here's how it works. People, I said about 2 billion people actually are infected with TB, yet they don't have disease. Most don't have disease. Here's why, all right? So imagine here's somebody who's standing next to someone with TB, and that person is coughing up a storm. So now we have these respiratory droplets. Right, now follow me for a bit. The small ones get down to the deep lung. So this is deep lung. This is where the alveoli are. Again, if you've taken Bio 162 last semester, we talked about the alveoli. So the bacteria is now present here. All right, now follow me for a bit. In the alveoli, you have basically resident macrophages. These are white blood cells. All right, these white blood cells are supposed to kill the bacterium. All right, so the bacteria is in the alveoli. Now, here's what happens. These white blood cells, these macrophages, they walk by and they pick up the bacterial cell. In other words, they're supposed to be killing them, right? And that's what they're doing. They're doing things normally. But here's the thing. This microorganism, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, can actually survive in the very cells that are supposed to kill them. I guess some die, but here's what's going to happen. All these infected macrophages, they come together and they form a mass. This mass is called a granuloma. All right, so follow me for a bit. This organism got all the way to deep lung. Macrophages walk by, pick them up, all right? And now that macrophages are infected, these are your white blood cells, they're infected. But now they tend to associate together, like right over here. And other white blood cells and other cells come by, and you form this structure. All right, that's called a granuloma. Now, generally, what happens, this seals off. So remember what I said to you about 90% of people with TB, you're infected with TB, they don't have disease. Why? It's because this is walled off. Not much of a problem, all right? But here's what can happen over time. So when people do get disease, the bacteria reactivates. In other words, they're still alive in the macrophages. They reactivate and they convert this to like cottage cheese, like a structure, a granuloma with a cheesy consistency. All right, this is called a what is that term? Dang, a caseous mass. All right, that's what it's called. A casei refers to a cheesy-like consistency. So now it's pretty soft and it can break apart. So imagine this thing is busting apart. The bacteria can be freed, and now they can move from one side to the next in the lung. So it spreads in the lung, and of course TB develops from there. All right? It can spread from the lung to other places also, like in the bloodstream. It can go to different sites in the liver, and even in the brain. I'll show you some slides later on. But nonetheless, this is the typical pathway for getting TB. Most people they do not have the disease. Why? It comes back to this here. They have granulomas. Those granulomas are walled off. In other words, you took care of that problem by keeping that bacteria at a certain point. Over time, mainly because the person's immune system is being suppressed or whatever, the bacteria reactivates. And then it converts this to something more soft. All right? This granuloma breaks up apart, and now the bacteria can spread to different parts of the lung or to other parts of the body. All right? So again, this is the cycle for TB. Most people, again, would not get the disease. I want you to remember that. Over 90% they have the organism in the lung. But it's all in a very nice contained granuloma. No disease at all. In a few cases, now I have a secondary infection. And of course, that leads to disease. This is called a latent stage. Latent, not much is happening, all right? It's called a latent stage. So most people have TB in a latent stage. It's alive, the bacteria is alive, but it's confined in these granulomas, right? Anyway, that describes it here pretty well. Now, what are the risk factors for getting TB? I just mentioned to you, most cases are immigrants. So again, immigrants coming primarily from these countries, countries in Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe, Central and South America, all right? So these are the primary sites where we see high numbers of cases. People who have immunocompromised disease, like HIV patients, they're very high risk for TB. And again, if you're in close contact, think about people in prisons, or in churches, or very small spaces, right? Or small villages. You have someone with TB, those individuals interact with people in a small space. Cough up a storm, people get exposed to them, now you're infected. Doesn't mean to say you can get disease, but you're at risk for getting TB. And again, you can look at all these other ones here. Right? Okay, I talked about spread. And by the way, I'm skipping slides back here. This is for your reading. I want to get to the meat of what I want you guys to know. Well, miliary spread of TB is also called hematogenous spread. Basically, it's when the organism the granuloma breaks apart and the organism is now spreading. So think about it. Hema refers to blood. It's spreading through the bloodstream, or it's spreading to different areas of the lung. So in this case, this is from autopsy. There's a patient who died because of TB, so that TB was in the lung, but now it's spread to the liver. So all these tubercles in the liver is because of this type of spread, miliary spread or hematogenous spread. In this case, it's in the brain. Take a look at this. So that's a huge lesion of TB in the brain. Here's a 1-year-old kid who has TB in the brain. All right? So again, yes, I know it's primarily a disease of the respiratory passage, but this organism can spread by different mechanisms to different sites. In this case, it's in the intestinal tract. You see a lesion here. All right? The next thing, how do you diagnose a person with TB? Well, first of all, here's a patient who is suspected to have TB. You collect sputum on that patient, and then you do an acid fasting. So this should make sense to you today. I'm not going to say much about this because you talk about this in the lab. Tomorrow, people